right, well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Catherine Kennedy, and I am Nicole's Knowledge Manager and Researcher. Today we have a research and review webinar for you titled Education Practices and Backgrounds Associated with Effective Online Instruction for a Workforce of Critically Needed Algebra 1 and Biology Teachers. We have three wonderful presenters with us today, including Bonnie Swan and Mike Hines from the University of Central Florida, as well as Beth Miller from the Florida Virtual School, and they have shared their bios with me, so I'm going to go ahead and read them for you. Bonnie Swan is an expert in program evaluation and applied social research. She is currently the Director for Program Evaluation and Educational Research Group, also known as PEER, at the University of Central Florida. Dr. Swan has published and presented on topics related to evaluation and educational research. Her recent projects were funded by the Department of Education, the National Science Foundation, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Institute of Justice, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and others. She received her PhD in Education and MED in Mathematics Education from the University of Central Florida, and her undergraduate degree was in Business and Economics. Her research interests include evaluation, mentoring, online learning, teacher labor markets, educational equity, and professional development. She serves as past president for the Florida Educational Research Association, president-elect and VP for the National Association of Test Directors, and as a board member for the Southeast Evaluation Association. Dr. Hines attended Kenyon College and received a Bachelor of Science in Education from The Ohio State University. He taught mathematics and science in Akron, Ohio public schools for 7 years. While teaching, he completed a master's degree in mathematics education at Kent State University. After completing his PhD in curriculum and instruction at Kent State, Dr. Hines joined Florida Technological University in Orlando as an assistant professor in the elementary education department. Dr. Hines has been promoted twice in his tenure at the university and now holds the rank of professor. Dr. Hines' professional interests relate to mathematics education, science education, the use of technology in instruction, problem solving, and improving the preparation of teachers. He has been very active in obtaining external funding for research. He has received over $4 million in funding in the last 10 years. Dr. Hines recently directed a joint project of NASA and the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, Mission Mathematics, that resulted in 3 books for teachers of mathematics. Over the years, Dr. Hines has been published in many journals related to mathematics education and has consulted on several basal mathematics series for elementary schools. Most recently, he is publishing in the area of simulation in education as it pertains to the Teach Live project. Professor Hines is the founding director of the Lockheed Martin UCF Academy for Mathematics and Science. This endowed program prepares teachers of mathematics and science from elementary and middle schools for leadership roles in the improvement of mathematics and science teaching. He is also a Pegasus Professor, which is the highest honor bestowed on faculty members at UCF. Currently, he is Director of the School of Teaching and Learning and Leadership and Associate Director of the SREAL Laboratory. And finally, Beth Miller joined Florida Virtual School, or FLVS, in March 2006 as a learning specialist for new instructors and employees at Florida Virtual School and for FLVS franchises throughout Florida. She currently works with universities and community colleges, assisting them in incorporating online pedagogy into their teacher preparation programs. Before FLVS, Beth taught social studies for 4 years. Before her classroom experience, she was a training coordinator and trainer for Walt Disney World for 8 years. Beth received her master's degree in social science education from the University of Central Florida. She is a member of the Florida Association for Staff Development, Florida Association of Teacher Educators, and also of Nicole. So thank you to the three of you for your willingness to present this excellent research. I'm going to go ahead and advance the slides, and you guys can take it over from here. Thank you again.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a pleasure to be here today to share our work with you. And on behalf of Bonnie and Beth, let me welcome all of you who have joined the webinar. The Florida Virtual School and the School of Teaching, Learning, and Leadership here at the University of Central Florida have a broad partnership. We also, before we get started on our project, need to tell you that we do allow our students to do their student teaching in association with master teachers from the Florida Virtual School. This is a unique activity, we believe, in the country, that we allow our folks to learn how to teach K-12 online students through our teacher education program. This summer, we have 20 of our teachers, student teachers, working with teachers in the Florida Virtual School, and in the fall, we have nearly 50 students signed up to do their internship with the Florida Virtual School. We are continually interested in how we can improve the teaching of all subjects in K-12 online, and so is the Florida Virtual School. So this project was a focus project in the area of math and science that allowed us to begin to explore what happened in a particular period of time with the effectiveness of the teachers who teach Algebra 1 and biology. And the rationale for how important it is to do this type of work is that there are just a lot of students now who are engaged in online learning. Here in Florida, we're beginning to reach the stage where the Digital Learning Now Act is becoming effective, and therefore we have lots of students who have entered the 9th grade that are required to take a course in online from one agency or another. The Florida Virtual School being the largest school available for people to take those courses, it is most likely that they will take them through this particular organization. So it's important that we look at how effective, what makes teachers effective in the Florida Virtual School. First of all, we need to thank the Mortgage Family Foundation for allowing us to do this study and providing the support to collect the data and analyze the data. The Florida Virtual School, as a little bit of background, is a free accredited online public school. It is really a school district as well as a school that has served over 500,000 K-12 students since its inception in 1997. Because the Florida Virtual School's nationally recognized learning model, it is the most awarded virtual school in the country. I'm very pleased to say that we were proud to stand on the podium with them as we received an award with them for our partnership 2 years ago. There are over 1,200 virtual courses offered by the Florida Virtual School, and they are free to students in the state of Florida. This is important because we are looking at what makes the difference between effective teachers and less effective teachers in teaching online at the Florida Virtual School. We need to understand that teachers are encouraged to contact students, and students are encouraged to contact teachers. And this is a backbone of the Florida Virtual School program. They do interact in various ways, and usually that's by teacher preference, but student preference also plays a role, obviously. And the program emphasizes the importance of student content and student-instructor interactions, with less emphasis on student-student interactions. Students can enroll any time during the calendar year in the courses, which means, in our mind at the university, that our students who are going to work at the Florida Virtual School need to be highly prepared, because they must have wonderful command of their content in order to be prepared to teach any lesson at any point in time, because the students are not marching through the courses step by step. The purpose of this study was to examine the relationship between course completion rates and educational practices and backgrounds of 75 algebra and 45 general biology online distance education teachers in the year 2010-2011. Let me stop here to elaborate and say that course completion is the key for funding for the Florida Virtual School. Enrollment is not sufficient for funding. Only success in a course provides stimulates funding from the state of Florida. So this course completion is very important, not only to the student, but also to the organization. By examining educational practices and backgrounds of the teachers, we can see if there are any particular ones that have an effect upon how effective the teachers are through course completion. We're also interested in parent satisfaction as it relates to course completion and to student satisfaction. We're trying to add to the knowledge of what we think we know about what makes an effective teacher in this particular environment. Here are the research questions that we were looking at for this particular study. What's the average course completion rates for these courses? That's Algebra 1 and Biology 1. How do different aspects of online distance education teachers' qualifications relate to the course completion rates? And we looked at experience, certification, and degree level. Does the number of professional development hours that teachers experience relate to their course completion rates? These are all questions that, of course, relate to expenditure of funds at the Florida Virtual School and for expenditure of human capital. What do instructional leaders? Instructional leaders are equivalent to principals in brick and mortar schools, and what do they report differentiates the most and least effective distance online teachers from their opinions? Is there a difference in student satisfaction ratings for teachers with high versus low completion rates? In other words, are students getting satisfaction by completing the courses, or are they just happy to be online? How do teachers' contact records for frequency of teacher-student interactions relate to course completion rates? And we'll talk more about those contact records later. They were an interesting part of the study. So as we talk about the methods, I'm going to turn this over to Bonnie.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Swan, and welcome. Nice to see some familiar names. Thanks for attending. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the research methodology and then start out with some of the results from the study. Obviously, being online, and there's a lot of data available, and we had mounds and mounds of data to look at. We used a comparison model for some of the questions, so when we were comparing the most effective versus the least effective, we looked at the top portion versus the lower portion, so for some of the research questions. Then we also worked very closely with Beth Miller, who's a co-presenter here. Beth was on the phone with us or face-to-face with us, pretty much every other week or so, and that was really important to our research and to be able to understand the complexities and all the data. So that was really important, and so her time was really valuable and awesome. We had both qualitative, quantitative methods, and here we can go and move on. We used a client-based responsive approach. I'm a program evaluator. I'm mostly an independent evaluator for mostly large-scale funded projects. I like to use a client-based responsive approach, meaning I wanted to help Florida Virtual School understand their data and what they had and how to use that in ways to better meet their needs. So there was hopefully a learning curve for them on some of these things. We certainly learned a lot, and it was a great experience. We looked at end-of-course surveys for the students and Florida Online Reading, FLVS, there we go, does an end-of-course survey for their students, about 60%, a little bit further along in the course. We looked at COG logs, which are self-reported by the teachers. We looked at course enrollment and completion rates. Adjusted completion rates meaning students, not just students that enroll, but students that actually start the course when we looked at when we looked at that data. We looked at hours of professional development recorded by the school, not necessarily by the teacher themselves. We looked at the type of interaction, how many. I was interested in the frequency of interaction. Obviously quality is important, but we didn't have the time to look through the 500,000 records for quality, so maybe that's a future study we could look at. And that was in their content log database, the Florida Virtual School keeps. We did structured interviews with these instructional leaders. We interviewed all of the teacher leaders except one who declined to participate, and obviously that was their choice. And we looked at their perceptions with open-ended questions about what they thought would make a difference in being an effective teacher online. We used descriptive statistics mainly. We used t-tests. You'll see those results. We had some graphical plots. The interviews were done, analyzed using content analysis. I won't go into a lot of detail here. We had iterator reliability with our coding. So for the results, we started with just to look at the completion rates for the courses and see how many of the students completed. And we found that the adjusted completion rate for algebra was 68%, meaning that, of course, that many students who enrolled and started the course completed with a passing grade. For general biology, it was higher. These numbers, I want you to be aware that most of the students enrolled in this course, these courses are probably, there's a percent there, it's over half, are in for grade forgiveness. So these are not your average learners. These are a lot of these students are taking this course for a different time, and some of them have a lot of trouble. So this is a second chance. The courses are required for graduation, so it's high stakes. Course completion rates, just a different look at those. The lower level and the upper quartile, those were when we compare the top and bottom, those are the way we separated them, and you can see what I had already said a little bit differently here at the means. And then we looked at the qualifications of the teachers, starting with seniority. Seniority is basically how many years experience they have in the school where they're working. We looked at certification level and also degree level, just to see whether or not any of these things made a difference in course completion rates. For the seniority at Florida Virtual School, you can see on the left that the teachers in algebra, or the yellow, versus the gray, which is biology on the left, the teachers don't have quite as much experience in algebra, which is what you might expect in a brick and mortar school. But averaging equal for both courses about 2.5 years. We've done the same study in face-to-face, so this is pretty typical. And then before Florida Virtual School, we also looked at their records to see before they came. That average was about 7 years for these courses. This is the amount of experience. It's a little bit less than what we see in all courses combined from other research, but again, typical for these courses. And it's interesting when we looked at the seniority to see whether or not it made a difference in course completion rates. There was almost no correlation between that. Meaning the seniority wasn't related basically with how many students completed their course with a passing grade. And you can see here's the scatter plots. Over on the left, there's algebra. And on the right, there's biology. And in case you can't see, because I know it's sort of small, each dot represents a teacher. And the vertical axis going across is the number of months employed. And then the the horizontal axis, the number of months applied, and then going up and down is the adjusted completion rate. So the higher up, the higher the completion rate. So for the Algebra 1, you can see all those bunched up on a line, and so there were a lot of teachers hired that year, and you can see that it's spread pretty evenly for all teachers with that many months experience, or pretty much all over the place as far as their completion rates. And then the bottom two was prior to Florida Virtual School. We didn't want to combine these because we really don't know how much, because there's not a lot of research in this, how much face-to-face teaching makes a difference in online teaching. So we wanted to look at those separately. And then we looked at certification level. Dr. Hines and I have done the same research in brick and mortar schools and strangely similar results for certification level. We like to look at certification level because we don't have a lot of ideas about these math and science teachers, how many courses they've taken in math or science, and we think certification is one of the best indicators of how much content area knowledge that they have. The certification level test for 5-9. What is it? How many hours do they need now? 18. 18 hours versus 612.
It's 30 at least. Most have 36 or more.
Yeah, a lot more hours of math coursework as far as from a university in order to get those in addition to taking the test.
And the same is true with biology. Same number of hours.
Okay. And then 59% of these algebra teachers you can see were certified 612, and 41% were certified for middle grades. We have a lot of middle grade students taking algebra in Florida. It's probably like that everywhere across the country. Biology, 91% were secondary. And the rest were middle. And they went ahead and did some statistical tests on this, and we found that there was no significant difference, which I was really surprising. I would like to think that more coursework would make a difference in teaching. But we do know from our other research that if you tease out the whether or not the degree was in field, we found with hierarchical linear modeling in brick and mortar schools that it did make a difference. And we didn't know what these degrees were in, so we weren't able to check that for this group. But that would be an area that I would like to look at.
One of the possible explanations of the good performance of the 5 through 9 middle grades is that the curriculum that Florida Virtual School offers is somewhat helpful to people who may not have as much math content or biology content as you might want. There's very little opportunity for students to get misconceptions from those materials because they're so tightly written.
And I hate to use the word teacher-proof, but these teachers do get a lot of support. So maybe that's also why the seniority doesn't make a difference. We're just speculating, but there's a lot of support, and the courses are well designed. So these types of things just don't make as much of a difference maybe as they might otherwise. And then we looked at degree level of the teachers, and we found that about 42% of the Algebra 1 teachers and 47% of the general biology teachers had earned advanced degrees. In Florida, a lot of our districts offer a pay raise for teachers who have higher degrees, but we're seeing less and less of that. So we'd like to try to support that a master's degree makes a difference in online learning, face-to-face learning. So we're always looking at that. So this particular study, unfortunately, we found no significant difference whether or not a master's degree made a difference for these particular courses.
We've not been able to disaggregate the type of degree for the advanced degrees that students have, that teachers have. Whether they have a degree in counseling or educational leadership or mathematics education or mathematics. So not being able to disaggregate those data, we still have questions in our minds about what those data mean.
Thank you. I brought that up a little bit too, but we didn't. So before we move on to the number of professional development hours that teachers experience, I'd like to open up for some questions if we're able to do that. And so if you've had any questions about any of the slides so far, you can go ahead and type them into the chat box, which might be a little bit delayed. So Beth Robelia has asked a question, so are teachers encouraged to add to their curriculum? Beth, are you able to respond to that? Hello, Beth. Are you able to answer that question? Sorry.
Hey, Bonnie. I just did in the chat box.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go on. And if I missed any questions, if you'd retype them, I'm sort of lost because I'm not as good at this as Beth is, unfortunately. That's the number of professional development hours that a teacher's experienced over the year relate to course completion rates. And so what do you think? I mean, do you think that a teacher taking professional development hours, and these are logged by Florida Virtual School, whether or not that might make a difference in student achievement, or as far as of completion in this case. The average number of PD hours that were logged was 97 for algebra and 102 for general biology, so you can see that they do a lot of professional development at Florida Virtual School. And we found actually that there was a significant difference for the algebra teachers, in the course completion rates for how many hours that were logged, but there wasn't for the biology, so it did in this case make a difference for algebra. And we just have one outlier. You can see way over on the algebra that we took out for that group of data. But then on the right, biology, you can see there was a non-correlation there. And then I'm going to turn over to Beth. Beth, I'll answer a question. What do instructional leaders report differentiates the most and least effective distance online teachers?
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, Mike. All right, so one other part of this research was asking the principals. Instructional leaders are essentially principals at Florida Virtual School, and we did some questioning of them to ask them what are they seeing when they are working with teachers, and what distinguishes a most effective teacher from a least effective teacher. So we asked those questions and we got some interesting responses, and some of you might find these responses surprising. I won't read them out, but you'll notice that there is something missing from the main themes. And I'm wondering if you all will catch up on it, or y'all, because we are in the South, if you'll see something missing from these themes that you would expect for an effective teacher versus a least effective teacher. So if you do, chime on in the chat box. Ooh, 2 points for you, Eric. You get a gold star today. As a matter of fact, let me put that little gold star right there for you, Eric. Advanced degrees, you're somewhat close. If you're looking, you'll see teachers are, you'll see missing knowledge of subject matter knowledge. I can't speak today, so you don't see that anywhere here. You see themes that are more soft skills, we call them. Are they organized? Can they work independently? Can they be motivated? Can they be internally pressure prompted? That's number one. Are they working on the relationships with their students? Do they, again, balancing work, life, personal time, we call it. Constant and effective communication. That's another big one that differentiates most effective from least effective teachers. And This one's a small one, but a very important one, understanding and fulfilling job expectations. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the slide about it. You'll see that we did have one instructional leader talk about strong content knowledge, but that was more of an outlier. And then one also talked about the technology. Yes, Aaron, you are correct. You don't see anything about technology here, that they know the latest and greatest, I don't know, Evernote or Google Voice or Google Circle or Google Goggles or whatever. That really didn't come in this way. So very interesting. So let's take a little deeper dive to each of the questions. And we've included for you, for your reading pleasure, some of the comments that the instructional leaders made. And I'll just read one of them out loud for you. I think one of the things that the most effective teachers do is develop a time management system that is extremely organized, where they chunk their time effectively to where they can allow for purposeful phone calls to occur, to where they allow a certain percentage of their day to be able to provide exceptional feedback, because that is really where the teaching occurs. Feedback is one of the strongest points our teachers can have. That's part of that effective communications piece. And because we can't necessarily always give verbal feedback, our feedback is written, we have to make sure that it's succinct, it's to the point, it's descriptive, and it is encouraging. I think at one time in the past year we had talked about how can you fit effective feedback into a tweet, 140 characters. So just to give you some ideas of how we think about that. Let me see what's going on in the chat. I see some questions flipping through here. Oh, I see Vicki asked one, and I see Dr. Hines responded, and Dennis is asking, any data on the total time per week that teachers spend with the course and outcomes? Oh man, Dennis, that is a great question. I can only give you speculation. I don't even know. I don't even want to speculate on that one, Dennis. It really depends on the course itself. You know, someone teaching driver's ed versus someone teaching algebra versus someone teaching AP human geography. It's going to differentiate depending on what subject they are teaching. Great question. That in itself is a research. All right, so we got some questions taken care of. Dennis, I like your questions. Keep them coming. All right, so the number one theme was organization and time management skills, because again, these are teachers, you're not ruled by the bell. There is no bell for you to say, okay, first period done, let's start second period and move through a day. You have to be very reactive to your students and their needs. No 2 days are the same. The second theme is about building relationships with your students. And I think this, I'm actually surprised that this didn't score a little higher with the instructional leaders, just my 2 cents. I feel that building that relationship with a student is incredibly key, because you, again, you don't have the luxury of seeing that student face-to-face every day. You have to rely on other factors such as the phone, email, texting, instant messenger, tweeting, whatever is the latest and greatest communication. You have to use all of your tools to build an effective relationship with that student. Because if the student doesn't feel that the teacher is engaged with them, the student won't be engaged with the course. The third theme, again, it goes back to balancing work and personal time. And I'll just read one of the snippets from it. We have to train our teachers how to put themselves on a schedule, how to shut down, walk away, and refresh and rejuvenate. It's finding the balance and establishing that schedule. You know, when you work at home, it's very seductive, for lack of a better word, because there's always work to grade. Our students literally work. There's always a student in one of our classrooms 24 hours. We've done studies on that also. And so there's always work to grade, and so teachers will be like, well, I'll just grade for a little while. 4 hours go by and, you know, your family's hungry and starving for dinner. It's not like a traditional school where you can shut the classroom door, walk away, get in your car, and go home, and have that built-in balance of work-home life. This is really a tough one for our teachers to grasp, and we have a couple here who are attending, and I'll let them chime in a little bit that it is hard to balance that work-personal time when you first get started. FLVS can be a little overwhelming, I think, for our new teachers. So Tina is asking, what is the average FLVS student-teacher ratio? It depends, again, Tina, on the course that they are teaching. It varies, but I'd say for someone who's teaching algebra, probably 125 students at any one time. Our students are always starting and always ending. You could have 5 new students start on a Monday, and you could have 12, a different 12 obviously, finish the following day, the next Tuesday. So it fluctuates a little bit, but on average, for someone like algebra, 125. How often are teachers required to make contact with each student per month, per week? According to our state statute, what we're supposed to do by law is to have 1 monthly contact. However, we have been requiring our teachers to make weekly calls in an effort to engage students more. So great question. Thanks for asking. Dennis is asking, are FLVS teachers paid upon course completion only? Florida Virtual School itself, not the teacher, but the school, we are only paid if the student completes and passes the course. All right. I think Kathleen was trying to get a hold of me, or Catherine. I'll be quiet. I'll give up the mic if you need me, Catherine. I saw you chime in there. So Margaret is asking, can you be more specific about how you train faculty to balance personal work time if they are expected to be available 7 days a week? So Margaret, the key word there is available. We certainly do not have the expectation that our teachers are sitting in front of a computer for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. No one would put up with that crazy nonsense. We do encourage our teachers to find when their students are working and align themselves to when the students need them the most. A great example is the majority of our students are in a school during the day. So during the day it's pretty quiet. You can get a lot of grading done during the day. In the mornings particularly is a very productive time. And then take a mid-morning to mid-afternoon off, and then pick back up in the afternoon into the early evening making your phone calls or doing your live lessons. So that's just in a nugget how we train them. All right, I'm moving on. Yes, Rob, I'm sorry. I was being very student specific. I was recognizing my students' needs. Sorry, it's a bad habit at FLVS. All right, so moving on to the next theme. Being proactive about student success. Hey, that's just what I was doing. Again, those soft skills. We want to make sure that our students, that we as a school, as teachers, are doing everything to ensure our students' success. So relaying back to some of those questions, the last bullet point says, the least effective teachers. This is what they say. In the business world, you'd say, I'm a 9 to 5 person and I shut down at 5. The least effective teachers are not working with colleagues to see what they could do differently so their students could have more success. They're very independent. They act in just silos. They're not reaching out and using the resources that they have. The least effective teachers aren't engaging their students, are encouraging their students. So that's one of the themes that distinguishes most effective from least effective. Another theme is constant and effective communication. Again, going back to using every one of the tools that you have at your disposal, from texting to tweeting to Google Voice, however you want to communicate with your students. But our teachers are whizzes at constant and effective communication. Just a quick shout out in the chat box. What do you all think is the most preferred communication for K through 12 students today? Just quick. Text, over. Yeah. Yes. You guys know your students so well. So well. They like text. They like text a lot. Okay. So the last theme is understanding FLVS job expectations. This one I call the bonbon eater theme. Don't giggle. We have them. To the point where we, as part of the interview process, we bring prospective candidates into Florida Virtual School to give them the real deal. This is how hard we work. These are our expectations. If you are thinking that you can teach virtually and sit at home and maybe answer the phone or maybe grade a little bit here and there and just kind of be, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of slide by doing the least amount of work in our environment, it's not gonna happen. Our job is a tough one, and we are very dedicated, and we hold each other to high standards. So understanding FLVS job expectations is a big theme. All right, I'll keep on moving because I see time is ticking, and Bonnie and Mike are probably like, be quiet. All right, what do instructional leaders report to be the most effective things that online teachers do to limit attrition? And attrition is the students leaving your class. You know, we do have a high attrition rate in algebra and biology, which is why we wanted to focus particularly on these two subjects. But we wanted to know what the most effective teachers did. And it correlates quite nicely to most effective and least effective teachers and student attrition. And you'll see some common themes. Building those relationships with the students, constant and effective communication with the students, response time, that goes back to job expectations. Folks think, I can take a week to answer that kid's email. No, you can't. Students in today's world, they want an immediate answer, just like us, adults. We want an immediate answer too. I think that's why students and adults prefer texting over email. You get instant feedback. And of course, an approachable nature. Nobody likes a glacial teacher. Nobody likes that mean teacher. So you have to be approachable. You have to have that with it disposition. And then, of course, there was a little bit of an outlier. One teacher mentioned collaborating and teaming with other teachers, which I think is very important. And FLVS is making great strides to build collaborative teams for our teachers. So we'll take a little tour here. You can read some of the comments that our instructional leaders gave to us. And you know what I forgot to say? I forgot to explain this 89%. And Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the percentages here are the percentages of ILs who said this theme. I apologize. I got this far and I never said that.
Yeah, this is Bonnie. I guess it just came up in a normal conversation. Should we just ask this question and we let the conversation go? Most of these interviews were about 30 minutes long, and this is a topic that came up in the conversation. So it wasn't like a multiple choice, how many people agree with this. It was how many people really focused on this quite a bit in their interview. Thanks, Beth.
Thank you. The next theme that talked about limiting attrition was, again, constant and effective communication. Not only constant, but constant with a purpose. Constant with a purpose. And that purpose, of course, should be positive and encouraging, not necessarily punitive or reminding students that they're behind pace, pick up the pace, let's go. Another theme was response time and availability, again going back to honoring our role as an organization of returning any sort of phone call or email, text within 24 hours of receiving it, and also returning grading, any work to be done within 48 hours. We found that those students who get feedback quickly tend to stay in the course. And another theme was friendly disposition. Again, it's about being positive and being nurturing for our students. And right now, we've joked that it is Save a Senior season. I'm sure all of you have this in your school districts where your seniors, they realize they're a credit short or half a credit short or something, and they're trying to achieve the impossible, fit biology within a 9-week period. We'll encourage and we will work with them. We're not going to give it to them, but we're going to work with them. So we want to encourage. Save a Senior season, yes. I can't claim that one, Rob. That comes from our FLVS teachers. I'm just the messenger. All right, Bonnie and Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. And so the next question, and we just have a couple more questions here to go through, is whether or not the student satisfaction ratings based on the surveys that they fill out as they're finishing the course, whether or not that how satisfied they are makes a difference in the number of completers for the teachers. And so I just wanted you to know that only the students, the people who filled out the survey, the students, only 60% of the, or the ones that had completed at least 60% of the course actually invited to complete this end of course questionnaire. I think it would be good if I had a course like this, you might want to do a survey of non-completers at the same time to see what their feedback is, but this particular survey focused on the students who are on track for completing at that point. They were asked about the quality, they were asked about the frequency and type of interactions with their teacher, as well as a lot of other things, how interested their teachers were in their success, things like that. We were able to get these results from Florida Virtual School at the teacher level. And the students' ratings for this particular research question are displayed in the next couple graphs for the highest and lowest tertiles based on teachers' course completion rate. So here you can see on the left that the text messaging and maybe number of Illuminate sections seem to make a little bit of difference. The other ones are pretty much the same. For the upper and lower tertiles, with the biology on the left and the algebra on the right. The Illuminate sessions, Beth, you want to tell them what they do in the Illuminate?
Sure. The Illuminate sessions are, think of them as what you would teach in a classroom. If you had second period biology, you would teach your lesson. The Illuminate, just like we're doing now, it's a little bit lecture-based, a little bit interactive, where they teach a concept for a student. Illuminate sessions can also be used for one-on-one tutoring sessions, too.
Okay, thank you. And you can see that almost all of them use email quite a bit for both courses. And then it's the messaging. I guess the results are pretty mixed. And so a little bit more about communication. If communication was rated positively, again, higher for the upper group versus the lower for completers, and you can see that all the yellow bars are a little longer than the gray bars. So all of these things make a difference. It'd be great to do a little bit more research in this area to see whether these are significant differences, that you can eyeball them and see that all these soft skill type things actually are important. The feedback, the questions being resolved quickly, whether or not they talk on at least once a month. I hope they talk a lot more than that. I wonder if that question might be reworded to dig it down a little bit deeper. I'd actually like to ask all these questions open-ended to kids. And then we also looked at the contact records for the frequency. I know this is a hot topic for looking at frequency of teacher-student interactions related to course completion rates. So we wanted to look at this, and I want you to know this is not easy research. We had over 500,000 logs that we sifted through, and Beth and I had to meet actually at the coffee shop for me to get this data because there's so much information. Of the 19 types of contacts that are listed in the log, which is self-reported by teachers, 15 are student-teacher reactions. There were four types of logs that are four different contacts that are logged by Florida Virtual School or the call center, especially at the beginning of the course. But we didn't look at those. We only looked at the teacher-specific interactions. Of the interactions, I guess the email was used most frequently, with an average of like 17,000 emails that were logged a year, and that was about the same for biology, followed by the monthly phone calls, averaging about 777 and 871 respectively over that amount of time. There was a small positive correlation between the number of contacts and course completion rates for both courses, and we've combined all of these different types together just to keep it simple, but certainly we could do more difficult stats to dig into this a little deeper, but we did have some significance there. And that brings us to the close of our presentation here. Obviously there were some limitations, and so we went ahead and pointed those out to you in case you're thinking and about those. Obviously the call logs, for example, are self-reported. And maybe, they may have thought of a phone call. Some of them may have made phone calls without logging. Hopefully no one logged any phone calls that they didn't make, but again, it's self-reported. And again, the advanced degree course in field rather than any field would probably yield different results, we would think, but we haven't been able to look at that. So. And again, I want you to know these courses are required. These kids need these courses to graduate. They have to have a credit for every year that they're in high school. So every course that they fail in math or science, they have to take it again in addition to another math class in order to graduate on time. And so these kids are working very hard. They're trying their best, and or maybe they need some help with motivation as well. But it's important. It's critical that they finish these courses. In Florida Virtual School, for a lot of them, is their last chance. So thank you very much for attending, and I think we have a few minutes here for questions.
Thank you guys so much. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions. We have about 7 minutes, 6 minutes now. If you guys could also paste your email addresses in the chat box, because unfortunately the ones on the presentation themselves are not copy and pastable or clickable. So if you can go ahead and paste your email addresses in the chat box, that would be great. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please go ahead and take the microphone, or you can put your question in the chat box.
We do have some presentations that we've done on this. I plan to do for Nicole. We'll be working on a blog. We'll be providing a more detailed narrative about the study there. It'll also, if we get accepted, be published on the eLearn groups proceedings. We'll have more of a lit review involved with that. A little bit more detail about the methodology and the results there too as well.
Hey, is that Dennis? I think he was my A+ student. Any data about your younger student success rates? Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no. Florida Virtual School works with Connections Academy as our full-time elementary provider, and that is not a playground I play with very often. And I don't know if there's even been any research done over on that side of the house, to be very honest with you. Good question. Ah, thanks, Nancy. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm assuming WYVA is Wyoming Virtual Academy? Ah, and I would think with Wyoming, you would definitely need distance learning because those big blue wide skies lend to a lot of ground to cover. So it's beautiful out there. I've been. It's a gorgeous place. Beth, you're asking, has anyone done research on the big curriculum providers? Not that I am aware of. Bonnie and Mike might have some information, but it's not something that I know of right off the top of my head. And Tina, you're asking, dissertation topic is teacher-student interaction in Algebra 1. Oh yeah, Tina, this is a great bit of information for you. And let us know what you find out. I think the more interactions an algebra teacher has with a student, the better success. Just my little hypothesis.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. Any takers?
Dennis, my A+ student, he has that question. What was the PD that was measured? All right, so Dennis, this is my area of expertise. The PD that was measured was PD that was put into Florida Virtual School's professional development system. We use My Learning Plan. And what was tracked. And typically the type of PD that our teachers is getting is not only the induction that we provide our teachers, which is very intense, but also something we call bite sessions, which are 1 hour, typically 1 hour sessions that provide just-in-time training to teachers on a variety of topics. Also they do, get access to subject matter conferences and book talks and studies and work groups and other things. But that's where we got the PD from. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh, Eric's coming around. Has anyone used work like this to help recommend behaviors for online teacher evaluations for teacher effectiveness? We have. This actually the study kind of grew out of what our perceptions were of an effective teacher and what we would use to evaluate them. This is before there were some legislative changes in Florida which mandated us to use a new type of teacher evaluation system. But yeah, this research kind of validates what we already knew.
Well, thank you so much to our three presenters today.
Is student mobility taken into issue? Teachers are assigned courses. No, keep going, Catherine. I'll answer this one in the chat room.
Sorry about that. Okay, so we want to thank Bonnie Swan, Michael Hines, and Beth Miller for a wonderful presentation today. We will be sending out the recording of that just as soon as this is done and loaded up and everything on our server. And next month we have another research and review webinar on the 18th, and it will be about K-12 MOOCs, or massively open online courses, and we hope to see you there. I will talk to you all later. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks again.
Thank you.